On To My Way of Thinking, we're going to talk with another tree shaker, policymaker, believe it or not, businessman, and community activist. He's all of those wrapped in one. I've been following his exploits for quite some years now. He's even run for office at one point. And I wanted to have a conversation with him, and I think you'll find it interesting. Thank you for joining us, Diallo Sekou.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Tell us a bit about the state of our city and our state. What do you think about the state of our city and our state?
It's really much to do about nothing. And when it comes to a collective so-called Black perspective, nothing has really changed. And that leads me to, my thing about ownership and control. Till we get to a point where the community amongst us, all these small Black groups and organizations can collectively come together and agree on one particular voting or policy, then we can begin to leverage our power, our political power. And then, of course, they'll eventually go into your economic power. You have a governor in DeSantis who's a Republican. The majority of the offices in Jacksonville, Florida, are ran by Republicans. Now, I don't necessarily get into the Democrat and Republican thing because neither one was designed by Black for Black. So it'd still be a bit of a thing of we're depending on other parties to leverage our voice, and it hasn't happened. We still looking for other people to ride on to get our things across. So either way, the state, individually, I believe, our people are doing well individually. At this time, we have, because of technology, we have information at our fingertips. And so I think independently, Black people are doing a lot better. You saw the rise of small businesses, Black businesses rise 1,000% under the Trump administration. So, it's going to always be an ongoing battle for ownership and control, to have our own enclaves, our own true representation throughout the political process. So it's an ongoing thing.
Here in Jacksonville, we don't have, or we haven't had up until recently, such a major divide, at least among the citizenry, between Democrats and Republicans. Although running for mayor, we have one person running as a no party affiliate and the other person running as an independent. But we haven't had that big a divide among Democrats and Republicans as we've seen in some other cities. Do you feel that same thing, or do you see something different?
It seems like the same thing to me. It's a political show. So you're going to have, people jump out who know they can't get the votes, but they just are utilizing the platform to talk about their points. And then you have people that are special interests, and you have people that are generally people who care about moving the community forward. But the divide between political parties, as a nation, we probably should have a true representation of a percentage of every political party in the houses, in Congress, in our local governments. So if it's 3% independent, then the city council, state houses, they should all have the same thing. And I think you have a better way of having some equitable voices inside of the political arena.
Have you seen an increase in Black voter participation during your time here?
Well, I would have to actually look at the numbers, but this particular last special election was about 28% total of the voting population. And of course, our numbers are going to always go. Voters, super voters. I'm a super voter. I've been voting since I was 18 or 19, and I'm 50 now. So I've always voted, except, well, there was a period where I didn't vote, but I've always been engaged in the political process. So I don't really see that, but what we're working on under the Black Commission, it's two things. I'm not going to say one, it's two things. If I could talk about that.
Go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things is take a friend to vote. We've been trying to figure out measurable results, direct impact within that time frame that we have to go vote. So you take a friend to vote thing is simply utilizing the social media, and hopefully we can gather other younger people. See, people think young people aren't voting, but it is everybody is now voting. And I'm talking about very successful business people are not voting. They don't see the youth.
Very successful business people aren't voting?
Yes. People I've had conversations with, I'm sitting down and we talking. I'm just like, did you vote? Nah. Who you think I should vote for? What you mean? You didn't? Nah, I didn't. You understand? It's not the piece. So the take a friend to vote hashtag. Those people I know who registered to vote, I'm gonna take them. We're gonna take a picture. We're gonna post it on our social media. Hey, I just took so and so to go vote. Now that person I went and took, they have to go and get somebody. And this is for people that they have free time doing this particular election that's coming up. It'd have been great doing early voting, but this particular one, we can maybe get 2 or 3 people new to vote and who normally wouldn't vote. And this is the only way I can particularly measure this particular thing. But when it comes to Black voting power in Jacksonville, I've been pushing 5,000 Black men. We need a collective body. If you're a biker, you got a bike club. If you're Greek, your sororities, your Freemasons, your Shriners, all of those different clubs and different houses, we have to have a consortium or a commission where the head of each one, we can all go and say, hey, here's what we like. Here's a policy. Here's an issue that we can get behind. Boom, boom, boom. If we're leveraging that, then we can also watch crime go down. We can watch our health get better. We can become an internal resource. But when it's all just the one club and a one club and a one club, and it's only so-called, very small percentage of Black people in the city, we aren't really exercising true power. True power is going to come together when we are collectively doing it. And it doesn't hurt to do it. It only benefits us. It benefits the entire city, as a matter of fact.
Well, the mere fact that you're having to put this emphasis on taking a friend to vote, taking a buddy to vote, doesn't that bespeak of the fact that you've recognized that you've indicated the upper income folks aren't interested necessarily in voting, but doesn't it say that we do have an issue with people with just no interest in it? Because as the old saying go, they're going to do what they want to do anyway. So why should I bother with it?
Well, we have to look at the origin of why we aren't participating in the political process. Remember, 1865, we had the right to vote. We had all of that, but it was not enforced until the Civil Rights Movement, because we had Reconstruction, the ending of Reconstruction. Then we had the Black Codes also tied in there, the Jim Crow laws, ending only because of activists, revolutionaries, clergy, regular people fighting against slave laws in the 60s. So now we want freedom to move about. We should be able to go and vote without counting jelly beans or reciting the Constitution or doing 100 push-ups just to go cast a damn vote. So those issues, and then other candidates utilizing the collective Black people, by selling false dreams and false narratives about what's supposed to happen. So you're dealing with the people, as you know, we're exhausted when it comes to the promises and the whole thing. And so this is why you have people like a Noble Drew Ali, a Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad, and other groups, other Panther Party, SNCC. They came about because of, we're here in a land and we've never had equity, never had just policy. Everything we've had are based on institutions built by and for the European. And so at every level, at every institution that Black people are in, they suffer at banking, education, medicine, hospitals, you name it, we're suffering in. We're still kind of like, hey, when are we gonna, but we should be, let's do for self, while you're still saying those who are inside of those particular things still try to ease and get the inequities up out of those policies and institutions while still developing the things where you don't have to deal with those particular issues.
So your thing is to encourage, I will use the term, all people to get out and vote, because it is a vital piece of the democratic republic that we live in. but you have a bigger emphasis on getting Black people to get out and vote.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, everyone should be exercising their right to vote. And when people think that voting doesn't count, I can tell you that those people who had felonies, especially in the state of Florida, can now vote. And that's based on people going to vote, people lobbying, people exercising rights to protest and demonstrate to get people with who are ex felons to go vote. That's because people was fighting for that. One of the other thing I like to talk about why we should be voting and why we should be engaged in the political process, because at one point in time, it was legal to go to other continents, kidnap people, make them prisoners of war, enslave them, murder them, kill them, make them work for free. That was legal. That was based on policy. And then you know what was also based on policy? The ending of chattel slavery, right? Then when they had new construction and all these Black politicians was popping up in South Carolina, et cetera, they ended that based on policy. They ended Jim Crow based on policy. All of these policies, all of these things that shaped this country was because of Black people. But Black people won't get on the beginning of their own destiny when it comes to policy making and engage in the political process. Once we understand that, then we understand how we can maneuver and make things better for everyone in the country.
So how does activism play into this? Do you view what you're talking about as a form of activism or a form of getting more involved in politics?
Well, everything, number one, everything is political. How somebody feels, who they're in love with, how do you eat, it's all political. So I am a political activist. I'm a revolutionary. All of these things, what Dr. King did, what Huey P. Newton did, what SNCC, all of these things, NAACP, Urban League, all of these things, all of these were formed around from activists. Nothing that came about in America for the betterment of Black people came about by just having conversation. So we had to have demonstrations, because if you didn't have the money or the policy power, you had to utilize your bodies and your demonstrations for trying to make things better. And then also you're still having the meetings with who you can have the meetings with in order to try to get a policy that will institutionalize your beliefs, and the things that you believe in that should take place. So activism, all of it is activism to me.
Let's pause for a second. Let's change gears.
Okay.
The Confederate monuments has been a thing now for almost 2 years. Still got one that's causing a great deal of consternation over in Springfield, the Daughters of the Confederacy monument. And it doesn't appear that the city council is going to take any action to take it down, although the mayor's allotted money and a city councilman has proposed using a pot of money to get it down. But it looks like it's going to go back to committee again. And as a guy used to tell me, whenever it goes to committee, that means it's being sentenced to death. What's your feeling on these monuments? Are they important enough for us to worry about taking them down or not?
Well, I think Wells Todd and his Take Them Down organization doing a fine job in keeping information, keeping those symbols of oppression and hatred into the public eye. But it also goes to tell about how we have a city council that tiptoes and that's afraid to remove these type of monuments because they're worried about their voters, as if their entire life is revolved around sitting in a city council, which is a part-time job, right? So we're talking about eliminating symbols of oppression in a city named after one of the biggest oppressors of not only the so-called Native American, so-called Black people, Andrew Jackson. So I think we have to redefine, number one, who Jacksonville is named after. That's number one, just call it the River City. And then, we have to also, that Confederate monument inside of that park is also on Confederate road or way. So when they utilized that lost cause piece, they did a great job because they were trying to uplift their people over the people that they were steadily trying to oppress. They need to come down. They should have been down. When the mayor did that one move, it was a political like wag the tail wag the dog thing to appease the public. You had the football player, you walked around the block, and then that was it. You had the power to take this stuff down a long time ago. And so by removing those things, hopefully then we can eventually get into the policies, the reparations aspect, which I'm definitely working on. We can also get into the effects of how you ran 95 through Black communities, how they never apologized for these particular things. This city has a cold history, and it needs to have some things that need to come to the light.
Do you think a full citywide discussion about these issues, similar to what they did in South Africa at the end of apartheid, do you think that would do any good toward getting us closer to at least recognizing and eventually solving issues such as this?
I think we've had enough discussion, and those who are running for office have heard enough to make sound decisions on what type of relationships they want to have with people who are feeling a certain way about symbols of hatred in their city, Black or white. And I think our next mayor needs to be the one who's going to agree with taking this stuff down and moving our city close together and really being one city, operating more like a salad where everyone is an individual, but we're all collectively in the bowl, trying to make things better in the city. We know we've had enough town halls. This isn't yet last year or 2 years ago. It's been here. And I think they know what to do.
We're at a history-making point here in this coming election season, and again in Duval County here in Jacksonville in particular, and that all of the candidates that are running for sheriff are African-American. And so we're going to have the next sheriff of Duval County is going to be the second African-American to serve in that position. And, it's not being made a big deal out of because it's so self-evident, I would imagine. But
right.
Do you think it's going to make any difference that we have an African-American as sheriff going for the next 4 years?
We would hope. We would hope it'll make a difference for our community and not just some symbol of hope like we had when we had our so-called first Black president. We can't name one policy that was specifically for Black people, but you definitely had a symbol of hope through he and his wife. So if we don't have a sheriff that's about transparency, sheriff that's about listening to those who are close to the problem and not just coming up with the same old things, then definitely we can definitely make history. And really should be made a big deal that was all African Americans running for office. And that another big deal is that if a woman wins, if there's a Black woman that wins, that's also an historical piece. That's not the second, but that would be the first historical thing.
Yeah.
Then you would have people like if Angie Nixon wins, if LJ Holloway wins, if Keisha Burton, you have Black women all the way down the line, probably for the first time in history. You have a sister that's over the school board. Come on, man, this is crazy. This is a crazy time. And these, I don't remember any of these women out here talking, about other things other than community stuff. But I think this is a great time for those to exercise their vote, to go vote, and those who could lend some influence will push hard to get these people to go vote on who they think are the best candidates. But Jacksonville put out great product, man. Jacksonville put out great product, man. Individuals throughout the history of this city.
Yeah, throughout the history of the country, quite frankly. We've got a number of big names that have come out of here, and can name Jacksonville as that. In fact, the Val Demings, who's running, of course, for United States Senate, was born and raised here in Jacksonville,
Right.
and became sheriff down in Orlando, in Orange County, for
Right.
quite some time. I think her husband is now a mayor down there. So yeah, a lot of things, a lot of persons have come out of Jacksonville. They had to leave a bit to get to be famous, but they they
Right.
stopped here in town at any rate. You're
Right. It's like
involved.
the Jaguars. You got to leave Jaguars to go get the trophy.
You got it. That's the only way you're going to get that championship. You got to go somewhere else to get that ring.
Right. Hopefully, we'll get it this year.
Yeah, it looks better. I must be.
Right.
You're involved in housing. You're involved in housing, which is a big deal. Conservatives that I've talked to, dyed in the wool conservatives, right wingers, are now feeling the same pinch that everybody's feeling across the country, with rent rates rising and the prices of housing, along with just buying a house, skyrocketing to that extent here on the north side. It's nothing now for us to have houses that are running in excess of $300,000 to $500,000 for you to get into. And with rent rates the way they are, and for it doesn't matter what color you are, the rent has been going up. I've got one gentleman that I talked to who actually was running for Congress, and he's got a long running beef with the new corporation that took over the property that he and his wife had been living in for the past 20 years. And instead of seeing a 3% rise every year when he got ready to renew his lease, he looked up and he had a close to 50 to 100% increase in his rent. And now they're all screaming about trying to get some form of rent control. How do you view what's happening in housing, and how do you view what's happening in housing versus what you've had to do and the adjustments that you've had to make?
Let me ask you this. So I want to unpack something real quick. How do you define conservative?
Well, conservatives I define persons who like to have things the way they've always been. And in today's speak, it's almost a return to yesteryear. It's a return to Leave It to Beaver and I Love Lucy time, where folks slept in two separate beds. And when you look at all those black and white movies on TCM and all of that, you don't see any black folk roaming around there. You don't see any Latinos. You see an occasional Asian in a servant capacity, but you don't see any of that. And America was just fine the way it was. Even I took a look at Godfather. Goodfellas. The movie Goodfellas. And do you know, and it's a very good movie, but when you look at that, it had all the stars in it, Pacino and De Niro and Michael Imperioli and a whole bunch of other folks, produced by Martin Scorsese. A great movie, but it was from a time and a place in which these folks did not deal at all with people of color. There are no people of color in that entire 2-hour movie, except for one black guy who's a ticket taker. He has all the 5 words. And believe it or not, it was Samuel L. Jackson's debut in that.
He forgot to get rid of the car.
He forgot to get rid of the car. He had 20, I counted them. He had 20 lines, and they shot him halfway through the movie, shot him dead halfway through the movie. And they didn't even come back to show that. They just showed his body dead.
Right.
But that was a time in which many people, conservatives, loved that period of time, that we weren't there.
So, and then it's also about who's telling the story. But because I had a guy tell me what a conservative was, I think it's 3 F's. So it's 3 things, like family, guns, and faith. Family,
faith, and guns.
Something like that. I was like, oh, well, and then, the other part is black people are really conservative. So I was telling him, black people would be Republicans if the face of Republican conservatives wasn't racist. Right.
Well, and remember, most black people were Republicans until around 1966, until the change took place from 66 to 75, when
King was Republican.
Yeah, I mean, many of the folk, because the Republican Party was the party that freed the slaves, and
Right.
they all stuck pretty much stuck with that,
Right.
with it. But
100
the
years.
change came, and many white folks, politicians, and especially down here in the South, they left the Democratic Party because too many black folk were joining it, and it was becoming what they viewed to be too left wing, too liberal, and they left it and transferred over to the Republican Party, and that's the party of the South right now, is the Republican Party. So conservatism is, I view it as, is looking for things the way they were, and to
Okay.
have things not have radical changes. Let's
Right.
take our time and do it. Wait your turn. Let's not do it right away. I mean, from the time of the country was founded from 1776, it wasn't until 1922 that women finally got the right to vote. And as you said, they got it by policy, protesting, and eventually getting enough votes in Congress and across the country to pass the amendment.
Correct. So, all right, thank you, man. I wanted to get your perspective on that. But with the housing thing, it's a couple of perspectives. I'm an investor, so real estate was the best, one of the best investments I think any person can possibly make. You're talking about having assets, and you're talking about things that you can leave to your children and their grandchildren that can, and then you can also turn the policies, turn those assets, into a bank. So it's a few things. The other thing is Florida does not have state tax. So it's great for people why they want to relocate. Number one is state tax, and because rent was low in certain parts. About to when you get to Orlando, then things begin to change with a lot of the water from the middle of Florida on down. More high end, like Naples. I don't know about Fort Myers, but Naples, Miami, those places down in those other places. But corporations, you have a lot of professionals that link together and went in on a hedge firm and to put their money. They have places they want to put their money in assets. This is why they build entire communities, and they're only renting them out versus selling them because they want the loan money. So if you and I create a hedge firm and we got 20 million in there, well, I'm gonna hire a guy to go to Florida, buy up everything, and let's make our money start making long-term money. And so in that they were able to raise the rates, but you're looking at a city that never really raised its rates. To me, Jacksonville, location wise, is the best location in the country. This city, we 5 hours from Miami, 5 hours from Atlanta, 8 hours from Louisiana. Like, we're right here with every interstate almost stops at or begin or runs through the major ones. And also, we're on the water. We're in the peninsula. We're on the water. Jacksonville, you could drive to our islands, our beaches, our lakes. You want to see clear water, drive down a couple hours, you can get the clear water. Palm trees, fruit, sure. This is the best area. But if we're going to do business, we are going to have to raise the money. We're going to have to raise rents. Raise the value. So let's say, for example, I lived in Durkeeville 16 years, and I started buying the properties in my area with the intent on what we call a Sankofa district. I'm trying to create an area where we can measure and have a direct impact on the things that we want to do socially and economically and politically. So the Durkeeville area was the area, we're working on. So we call it Sankofa district with the Sankofa initiative, real estate, instead of, we're not going to gentrify, we're going to reinvest in our area so we can cut checks and change the scene. We can change the face of the area. If I'm purchasing, I bought 2 houses. The first 2 houses was like 15, it might have been $30,000. 2 houses. Why are 2 houses costing $30,000? So these aren't like people you gotta look at, I'm investing inside of a business. That business is just a $30,000 business at that time. In the next couple of years, now One was sold off to go invest into the other one. One is still remaining. That house that was purchased, probably maybe 15, it's now worth 80, 85 because of houses being built and sold within this 1 square mile area of 16th Street off of Fairfax and Myrtle.
But
So
can they afford the kind of rents that might be attached to that at this time? Are those people within 32209 Myrtle Avenue, 8th Street, and 12th Street around there? Are they in a position to afford the kind of increases in rent that is being asked?
Well, it will be the people not who live in the area, but people who come to the area and want to rent. So there's in my experience, if rent is 5 and below, I got a problem because now you're bringing me my rent in 3 pieces in a month. No, let's raise the rent to let's raise it up. Let's raise it to $750 and see what happens. Now we're getting a different caliber. We're getting a different caliber renter. We're getting people, and then the people who invest in these properties can't be slumlords. They have to want not just that home, but the entire area to be better. And that's what the whole deal is. I mean, some of the rent may be exuberant, and some of the things, we're in a capitalist country. This is going to happen. And this is going to happen, especially to people who don't own or control their property. We're still renting, and we don't own anything. So we still leave ourselves in a position to be not be in control of what people are saying that we have to pay for building.
Well, the folks in New York have experienced this exorbitant increase, and certainly they're having a heck of a time out in California with the increases because of the increases all the way around. Now, what they did up north is that they went in, they had to do a thing called rent control. Now it's being mumbled about down here. But so would I put you in the category of not being in favor of any legislation that would put in place some form of rent control?
I'm not about controlling anything about how much man a person can make, but I'm not about either. I'm a community person, so I'm not about raising rent on a person who can't afford. So when I raise my rent, the person is out of there, going out of there. The rent is raised to a certain thing. So, and this is how I get paid off how I live. So if my almond milk that used to be $150 is now $450, everything I feed my families, my mom and my sister, we all live in one home. If all of those things are going up on an increase, what do I have to do? I'm an investor. I have to pass it on to those who are paying rent. And I'm not saying pass it on to put them out the streets, but we got to pass it on with a certain, Florida has I'm not part of the, certain things like a corporate thing. I'm a private owner. So a lot of those things don't really fall on me, but it falls on my consciousness to do what's right for people that are trying to have a house. And I went into investing into real estate to be able to create generational wealth, to be able to create some type of affordable housing also.
Do you see these increases mainly as a result of inflation, or is it a result of demand?
They still haven't got to the saying that it is inflation. It's just business.
So demand.
It's business. All right. And guess what? Those high rents, people are renting them.
Yeah.
And this thing was taking place now, has always taken place. When you read the color of law book, when you're talking about redlining, when, for example, the white real estate agency will go through the white neighborhood in order to try to get this area. So they would pay black people to drive through with loud music, right? They would knock on the doors of white people with black men. This is in the 50s and the 60s. Hey, are you selling this house? They have black girls walk through with strollers. So guess what happens? The white person undersells to the real estate agent, and then the real estate agent turns and oversells to black people. So black people being on the end of other people's financial goals and dreams is not new. So we have to pay attention to cycles and patterns that put us in a position to complain about what they're doing to us. You understand? So we had to ease up out of that. And to me, it's going to be under ownership and control. There's no other way other than you get in there and say, hey, we just want to control the rent. The rent only can be raised at a certain percent every year, so forth and so on, which is already in the legislation.
Mm. Who is Diallo Sekou?
I'm your brother. That's it.
All right.
I don't really like talking about myself, man. I'm your brother. We just put in work where we see we need to put in work. That's all.
All right. Diallo Sekou, businessman, activist, and at one point in time, politician. We're going to talk in our next conversation about a little bit more about politics, about your experience in it, and we're going to delve a little bit more into the issues of crime that are happening in our community. And we're going to look at some projects that are taking place around the community from that central area 32209 and 18, which has always been developing well. We're going to take a look around the city and pick some ideas. There's about 6 major projects that are developing in and around downtown Jacksonville, all of them having to do a tremendous amount of apartments. And there's a new phrase I see that's already developed. It's called, they're setting aside certain amount of them for worker affordable housing that's going to be included in a lot of these developments that are there. I'm interested in seeing, and it looks like those prices look like they're going to be capped at a certain amount. Even over in San Marco, I think they're looking to do something else. So I want to talk a bit more about that in our next conversation, but I do appreciate you showing up today.
Okay. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.